Blockbuster films as we know it are dying, and it's kind of a good thing. It's no secret that the biggest players of the blockbuster game in the last 15 years are struggling. Specifically, post-Endgame, Marvel has seen a dip in both critical and commercial success. Likewise, Star Wars is seeming less special because of the oversaturation of the property, along with the helter-skelter quality of their output. DC was never really doing that great except for Batman films, but put a pin in that, because we'll get back there in a second. But recently, it kind of just feels like blockbuster filmmaking has become boring and predictable, right? Not quite. Something's happening, y'all. And it seems like the thing that's gonna not only save the theatrical experience, but propel us into a new era of filmmaking. What happens when the auteurs start dominating the blockbuster space? Interesting in theory, right? But it's happening right now. The most obvious example is Dune. For those of you who are new to Denis Villeneuve's work or didn't realize that you already knew it, this is the director behind Sicario and Prisoners and Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival. And before Blade Runner 2049, all of his work could be considered low or mid-budget films. But the number doesn't really matter. The important part is that he was able to work more freely and establish a style and themes for his films. He is without a doubt an auteur, and he brings his own personal vision to every film that he works on. For those of you who don't know what an auteur is, I did an entire video of it and you can check it out here. But to briefly summarize, an auteur is an artist with a distinctive approach to their craft. In filmmaking, these are the directors that aren't guns for hire but have a distinctive style and themes throughout their work. Basically, they're the true artist in cinema and not someone that's simply shooting a script or that's the figurehead of a creative committee. And what we're seeing now is these directors throwing their hat into the ring and making big blockbuster films the same way that they would make any other film, with style and their own unique eye. Dune doesn't look like any other film, it doesn't sound like any other film, and it doesn't feel like any other film. The way Denis Villeneuve approaches things is not that of a blockbuster filmmaker or a studio trying to make a lot of money. It's as an artist trying to make something unique with every film that he does. This is not the cinematography of a typical blockbuster film. This is not the music of a typical blockbuster film. This is not the sound of a typical blockbuster film. This is not the set design of a typical blockbuster film, and so on and so on and so on. So at this moment, when audiences are feeling franchise fatigue and wanting more original content, he's bringing something new to the table. What we're seeing right now is a shift away from the Marvel formula. You can see this most recently in Dune and Barbie, as well as the continued blockbuster success of Christopher Nolan, and even this mysterious new Paul Thomas Anderson film starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Over the last 15 plus years, Marvel Studios has been known for their incredible success with their interconnected cinematic universe. But in that process, they've also perfected the assembly line style of filmmaking. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, for those of you who don't know how filmmaking works, filmmaking is a collaborative art form with the director being the head of that creative collaboration. The director is the person that tends to make the final decision on pretty much everything. They can change the script, they can change the sets, they guide the actors, they determine the style of cinematography and what the shots are and everything like that. But what Marvel has been doing is, instead of having a sole creative lead, the studio executives have a predetermined way everything should go that ultimately connects into their larger cinematic universe. The style of lighting, the story beats, the CGI, the look, and even sometimes the shots are determined before the director even is hired, which is pretty backwards, and it kind of handcuffs the director creatively. Now, on a macro level, this is great for keeping multiple films cohesive and having some continuity over a cinematic universe. But on a micro level, all of the films start to get homogenized and feel the same. Now, on the other hand, you could argue that not having that continuity could ruin a film franchise. Take, for instance, the Star Wars sequels. The executives at Lucasfilm openly admitted that they did not have a plan for these 3 sequels. And without an overarching narrative, they all kind of feel disjointed. And a lot of retcon and bullshit kept happening. But here's the thing, I think you can have an overarching storyline that connects to other films, but still allow the creatives to be creative with the individual films. For instance, Rogue One, which is one of the best, if not the best, Disney Star Wars product. This film looks and feels different from every other Star Wars movie. And yet, it quite perfectly fits in between Episode 3 and Episode 4 of Star Wars. And it was done by a unique director, Garth Edwards, which, if you haven't seen his film Monsters, you should check it out because it's really f***ing good. But this isn't a video about Marvel or even Star Wars. So this is the last thing I'm going to say about them. Disney, Star Wars, Marvel is going to have to change with the times, because right now, successful blockbuster films are being made by auteur directors. Because of the success of these auteur-driven films, we're going to see these studios making more blockbuster films with a singular vision. And speaking of films with a singular vision, yes, nailed that segue. I think we're at the beginning of a trend that sees the best of the best directors making blockbuster films. Truth be told, most audiences probably don't even care if something is original content or not, but they do care whether or not something feels fresh. A good example of this is Batman. The most recent Batman film feels completely different from every other Batman film that came out before it. And Batman is a shining example of auteur-driven filmmaking at the blockbuster level. Going back to the very first Batman film with Tim Burton, it feels unique to him. Let's focus in on the three major versions of the Batman, or the Batmen, or Batman. You have Tim Burton, you have Chris Nolan, and now Matt Reeves. Not only do all of these Batman films by these different directors look different, feel different, and sound different from each other, but they also are different from the blockbuster films that were being produced at the time. Tim Burton is known for his gothic and dark style of filmmaking that you can see across his entire filmography. The world that he spearheaded feels like a Tim Burton film, and that goes for everything from the set design to the cinematography. The same can be said for Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Chris Nolan is known for having a more grounded and realistic approach to filmmaking, being opposed to overly using CGI and wanting things to feel more real. The Dark Knight trilogy feels like a Christopher Nolan film. Like, you can watch it and tell that the same director that directed Interstellar, Inception, and now Oppenheimer made these films. But not only that, they stood out from X-Men and Spider-Man and the MCU films that were coming out around the same time as them. And Matt Reeves is different because he managed to spend most of his career working on blockbuster franchises like Cloverfield and the Planet of the Apes franchise, and still develop his own style and look and personality to his films. The Batman is a wholly original and unique take on the franchise that could only come from a director who had the freedom to explore and create alongside his collaborators to the best of their abilities. These films show that it's not about the films themselves, but about the filmmakers who bring their own unique touch to each work. And here's the thing, not only are auteur filmmakers making more blockbuster films, but the films that they're working on are becoming blockbusters. I mean, you could look at Poor Things from Yorgos Lanthimos, or hell, anything Jordan Peele puts out. These films are not franchise films, they're not well-known properties, they're original content that are becoming successful. I made the argument in this video that directors are the new movie stars, and because I feel that they are the new movie stars, I think studios should be taking advantage of that and putting them at the helm of their biggest releases of the year. And when I say them, I mean the auteurs that actually have a unique vision and style to their work. And not only that, but investing in filmmakers and films that aren't well-known properties to allow these filmmakers to develop and grow. Steven Spielberg is a great example of a filmmaker that is not only an auteur, but a blockbuster juggernaut. This man pretty much invented the blockbuster, and then he took it to new heights with the Indiana Jones series, and E.T., and Jurassic Park. Meanwhile, he was also making films like Empire of the Sun, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Saving Private Ryan, and Schindler's List. He's a director that can work in the commercial and personal space, and he can make the personal feel commercial and the commercial feel personal. And his style is undeniably recognizable throughout all of his films. Him being the most successful filmmaker of all time shows that a director that makes personal works that people want to see is a winning formula. Because of the audience's changing appetite, studios should be looking for filmmakers that have unique visions and can make something feel different and special, whether it's original content or well-known properties. Greta Gerwig made Barbie feel unique. This is a well-known property that has decades of customer recognition. Barbie could have easily been a boring, cookie-cutter, G.I. Joe flavored failure. But Greta had her own unique spin, not only on the page, but on the screen. She took something that everybody knew and made it feel different and special for them. She actually was allowed to impose her style and vision on this property, and it was the most successful film of 2023. And beyond it being a box office success, it was its own unique work of art, whether you like it or not. The great thing about filmmakers like this is they're more intentional with everything from the visuals to the sound to the way it's exhibited. For instance, the utilization of IMAX and other advanced cinematic technologies by these auteurs are not last-minute additions, but thoughtfully integrated into the filmmaking process. These directors consider such technologies from the onset of their creative process, ensuring that the technology enhances the storytelling rather than merely amplifying the spectacle. This is the kind of thing that auteurs do. They care about every single piece of their work. And now more than ever, these directors are being attracted to big budget filmmaking. For instance, a director like Paul Thomas Anderson, who is known for his critically acclaimed character-driven films like There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread. His newest film that's supposed to come out next year reportedly has a $150 million budget, which is the most that he's ever worked with, but knowing who he is as a filmmaker, you should know that he's going to bring his own style to it. This film is very anticipated because people want to see how he's going to bring his style to huge blockbuster filmmaking. Even a studio like A24, who's been known for their more director-driven films, has said that they're going to be taking steps to making more blockbuster type of filmmaking. A24! Fucking A24! This is the studio that makes films like Moonlight and Lady Bird. People were worried about this when they announced it, but I'm not, because I think they're making strategic moves to not only find films that are commercially viable, but keep their identity as a studio that's artistically driven. The film Everything Everywhere All at Once, which blends indie aesthetics with blockbuster elements, is a perfect example of what they can do in this space. This film not only succeeded commercially, but it resonated on a deeper artistic level, pushing the boundaries of genre and narrative structure. Everything is secular. This isn't new. Following the freedom of the silent era of filmmaking, we got the restrictions of Hollywood's golden age. Following the golden age of Hollywood, we got the heights of creativity from New Hollywood in the 70s. Following the 70s, we got the corporatization of Hollywood in the 80s. Following the 80s, we got the American independent movement of the 90s. Look, we've reached a point where the pendulum is shifting back from the studios to the artist and allowing the artist to express themselves on many different platforms. Not just low-budget filmmaking, but the highest budget filmmaking can only be beneficial to the audiences. Basically, we're in for some good times at the movies.